What's up, guys? It's Giga here. Ooh, we got a message. This is why this is the greatest game. Anyway, it's Giga here. Lucas here too. This is going to be our first edition of Why Giga and Doggo think Elden Ring is not only going to be Game of the Year, but most likely one of the best games of basically the gaming generation, in my opinion. But I'm going to stop right here and say there are spoilers ahead. So if you haven't played through the game, which I have not finished the game yet either, so not all spoilers are going to be spoiled. But there are going to be spoilers, so if you'd rather not watch this now, I understand. But we're going to be analyzing why certain areas and why certain mechanics of this game really just make it a huge generation above, other games going on right now in the past, how they compare to others, so on and so forth. So I really appreciate the support, and without further ado, we are going to go ahead and spoil the first area, which is Limgrave. When I first saw Limgrave, I mean, obviously the ambiance, every ambiance in this game is just incredible. The environment is insane. You even see one of the bosses right there that I haven't beaten yet. So, anyway, when it comes to why Limgrave has certain mechanics and certain aspects of it that are just far and beyond so much better than all, like many other entry or intro first levels of a game. And the first thing to note, and I think this is pretty controversial, but I'm just going to say my opinion right now. The first thing to note is that the Cave of Knowledge that you go into for the tutorial, I actually think is exceptional. I think that people who say that they didn't understand that they weren't supposed to go talk to the or go up to the gray white ghost and at least see what's going on. Um, I'm almost sorry because I feel like they are too scared of Souls games at that point. And part of Souls games is, to have mistakes or to have, you know, missteps. And so if that initial misstep was just talking to the ghost, then so be it. One of the initial missteps in Demon Souls is to get punched by the dragon god. And that's if you do really well. So, uh, I think that the tutorial is just fine. I honestly think there's nothing wrong with it. That's again my opinion. But then as you come out, and that's another mechanic that we need to talk about. As you come out to see all this, I think that it really goes to show just how vast the world is, and the great thing that I think they do with almost all of these. So you see this like special, not bloodstain, but message right here that's lit up specially. It says, "Find yourself maidenless, off to Liurnia with you, then seek the Rose Church west of Gate Town." I don't even know if that was there originally or not, but the thing that I really like about this, another message of praise, we need to start counting those, is the grace mechanic. How it's pointing you towards where the next step is, generally. And so if we look at that right now, the next step generally is this Church of Ella, where if you have played the game, you know that it really does, like, really serve as maybe your first hub in the game. So, because right now, all we know is that we just came into this big tunnel and we have this huge open world where we have nowhere to go. So, overall, when I say the grace mechanic in the very beginning, I think it's really, like, excellently done. It's very small, it's nothing flashy. It looks really cool, particle effects and all. Um, and it does the job. It when you get further along, so the Church of Ella makes you go towards this gate front, and then from there you go into Stormvale Castle and so on and so forth. They're not in every single one, and so because of that, it really does give you this really excellent opportunity for open worldness, if you will. And so I think that it's really well done. I won't belabor the point anymore. The other thing that I'm going to talk about with Limgrave is that because there are so many ways to go, so you can follow the grace path here, but there are, a whole other 180 degrees of even more probably of world to explore here, all in which, and obviously I haven't done everything yet, but there's so much that you can go into, and it does a really good job of deterring you from places that are overly difficult. So for instance, everybody hates Caelid, and it disappears. That's interesting. Everybody thinks Caelid is really hard. It's kind of like Blighttown, and if you'll go back to Dark Souls 1, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that it's very difficult with the Scarlet Rot idea. Obviously, if you go further into this and then you get to this boss fight, which anyone who knows what's going on in Caelid probably understands which boss fight I'm talking about. Um, at least for the Great Rune boss fight. And then on top of that, there's all these different dungeons and whatnot. I even stay out of this Scarlet Rot pit here. Um, and then there's, it tells you basically to stay away. It even turns like this deep red, which makes you just think stop, right? Like don't go there. Now the other aspect of it is this peninsula down here. I don't think it has like an actual name. Maybe it does, but this area I think is again super super well done, and this isn't even part of Lim. Well, maybe it might be part of Limgrave technically, um, but it does a really good job of then introducing harder enemies, harder bosses. You start to go through these areas, and it teaches you that once you get Torrent, which is pretty quickly on in the game, which you get over here somewhere. Or actually, I think you get at the Church of El. I think Ronnie gives them to you. Gives them to you. Gives Torrent to you. And so you can see there's different aspects of Evergaol. It gives you different runes to go explore. The Minor Urge tree is right here. All the while, it still doesn't overload you with difficulty. Even the boss all the way at the end is not one that is overly difficult. Definitely a challenge. Most, if all of the bosses like that, especially in the beginning, are definitely a challenge. But they're not, especially this one, is not going to be the one that you get stuck on for hours and hours and hours per se. I think it definitely, and if it does, it's teaching you really strong mechanics in the game, and it's teaching you how to play like a Souls player, which is really, it's important. It's honestly very, very important. Um, it also does a good job of teaching you about fast traveling so that you don't have to travel back and forth all this time. And then the final thing that I'm going to touch on with Limgrave, and obviously you can go into like many, many details about this. You could talk about the different like selling storyline aspects of things, how there's different vendors, like there's different artist shacks, things like that. They introduce a lot of different things. There's even this, the Riverwell, the infinite ladder, if you will. Uh, there's a lot of different things that go along with it, and it introduces it in a way that if you cannot go one way for skill, for difficulty, for willingness to even go that way. So, for instance, you could go through Caelid if you wanted to. You get rewarded very, very heavily. I know a lot of people have been talking about the whole dragon cheese that you can do or something like that. I think it's over here. Yeah. Where you basically just stand there and bleed the dragon so that you get like 100 million gazillion souls, whatever they are, runes. And so, they even had, I don't know about anyone else, but I've never really used the telescope mechanic, but they introduce it, and so again, it does a really, really great job of all leading up towards and pointing you towards the first Great Rune boss of the area, which has this dungeon of Stormveil Castle. This is the last thing I was going to touch on. Stormveil Castle, that, again, it shows you and demonstrates to you that even inside of a, quote unquote dungeon of the castle, there's many, many different parts to it. And obviously the verticality of the game is a whole other new part, because verticality has been an aspect of Souls, but it hasn't been one that's been deeply as explored as this game, because you can jump. Obviously now, you used to not be able to jump. And so when they talk about, or when they show you that you can, and I'm sure everyone who's listening to this has done this before, but when you can see that you can get on the tiniest little ledge to jump on another tiniest little ledge, to hop on the side of a wall, to then fall down on something, and blah blah blah, and then there's an item. And it's like, it seems like the game devs really didn't intend for that to happen, but they did. And so I think that's super super cool that they they are challenging you to do the very most that you can with everything that you're given, and with that they still make it fair in the sense that if you do something, so if you, let's say we go back to that example. Let's say you do that and you miss the tiny ledge and you're like, God, like this is impossible. How am I supposed to jump on that? But then all of a sudden you keep trying it and trying it and trying it. And then on the 8th try, you finally land on it. And then you're like, oh, okay, I need to do blank. It's not that I need to just jump over there. I need to run and jump, or I need to run and, I have more likelihood of landing on this if I run along the wall and jump, or, so on and so forth. And so then because of that, it really shows you and teaches you that the game is not about this overloaded difficulty that just wants you to get lucky or wants you to feel like everything is just so stressful or so demoralizing. I think that Stormveil, of all the like entry areas, so for instance, when I think back to Dark Souls 1, you think of like the Belfry Gargoyles, right? I think it's a fair area, good area, things like that. Not as vast as Stormveil Castle, but that was also many, many years ago. You go to DS2, and DS2 honestly has this sort of vibe to it. And so they do that decently well, but you can definitely say that the quality of enemy and bosses are much, at least in my opinion, of where the Dragon Rider, I forget, it's like the Tower of Hyde or something. Um, the Dragon Rider is the first one, nowhere in comparison to this sort of dungeon area. And then in Dark Souls 3, you would say that it's where Vort is. And I'm trying to remember the name of that, but I can't off the top of my head. And so for Vort, you would say that probably the quality of those enemies and bosses is closest, and area, like scale, is closest to what Stormveil is. But then with the decision making of DS2. And so because of that, they're combining, and this is the overarching theme, they're combining different aspects of the Souls games and putting it together to formulate what, at least in my opinion, I think Limgrave demonstrates being the best and most like productive, effective first quote unquote level of one of these Souls games that there's ever been. And so that's my opinion. There's so much more that you can go into it. You can go into the Divine Bridge aspect of things. You can go into the Night and Day. I really haven't explored the Night and Day stuff as much, but I think it just does really, really well. And then what we're going to be talking about as we go along is, and we can even delve further into certain aspects of the peninsula here, and really the next aspect of things that I want to talk about is going into Liurnia and discussing, why Liurnia is good, but also why I think Liurnia confuses players. In the sense that they did so well to lead someone this way, and then after that there's less instruction, especially if you miss this one guy in the Church of Irith in the church. Which may be a good thing or may be a bad thing. Again, this is opinion, and I like analyzing, I like discussing. This isn't a space for us to get mad or annoyed with each other. It's just like, I want to hear opinions, and this is my opinion, and I hope that it helps you guys formulate opinions if you don't have opinions, or it gives you guys a space to discuss opinions, and, you don't have to try and prove anyone that they're wrong, but it makes me curious to hear what other people have to say. So anyway, guys, we're going to, like I said, go ahead and do this for many other areas, many other things in Elden Ring. I love this game so far. I think I've played over 50 hours so far, 60 hours. And so, we'll see how things go with all this. But I really, really appreciate you guys watching if you watched this far into it. It's kind of like podcast style, so we'll see how it goes. But anyway, feel free to give me feedback on this. Feel free to tell me if this is just no good. Or really just to tell me how I can make this better so that we can really enjoy and further what I think is anyone can agree on that is certainly a masterpiece or a trailblazer of a game in itself, and how one, it can get better, two, we can enjoy it as a whole, and three, how and why this may or may not be the only Elden Ring sort of game that we see. Because I think that's a whole other aspect that's very interesting to talk about. Will we ever see another game like Elden Ring? But anyway, guys, I hope you have a great, great rest of your day. Take care, and I can't wait to hear your feedback. I'll talk to you guys later, and I'll see you in the next video.